Hello, I am glad to know that you have joined me again on another edition of Agri Biotech and Food Security. This episode is dedicated to the public acceptance of GM crops across the globe, with particular reference to Nigeria and indeed Africa. No doubt that there is significant gap in farmer and public acceptability of genetically modified plants and crops for production in several countries of the world. But hear this, in 2021 alone, 67% of the world's 195 countries have adopted biotech crops. That's according to the International Service for Acquisition of Agri-Biotech Application, ISDA. The report indicated that biotech crops are the fastest crop technology in the world, achieving 112-fold increase since its commercial introduction in 1996. Important factors influencing consumers' attitude are the perception of risks and benefits, knowledge and trust, and perhaps personal values. There is also political concerns and societal development that, of course, share a negative environment for agri-biotech. Some experts would say focus on huge agricultural productivity associated with food security and not the technology. We shall be dissecting all the perspectives, including labeling of GM foods, environmental implications, and of course ethical issues. Guest on the show is Barrister Tietie Frank, who will do the analysis of public acceptance of GM plants and crops in Nigeria. I am Kirian Umayo. Let's just get started. With me to discuss the topic is no other than Barrister Tietie Frank. Barrister Tietie Frank is the convener of Food Avail Nigeria. Perhaps in the course of the program we'll be able to tell us what that is all about. But for now, let's welcome him to this edition of Agri Biotech and Food Security. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you, my pleasure.
All right, now we are looking at public acceptance of biotech crops in Nigeria. Well, of course, historically speaking, it's usually difficult for any society to accept change, especially when such change is scientific in nature. Perhaps requires some explanations for people to, understand the concept in the first place, especially even the learned ones among the society. Now, let's begin by asking you to explain to our people the need for one to adopt, to change when the time comes.
Oh, well, change oftentimes is a necessity. For those who are not prepared for change, they will be overtaken by change. Interestingly, I am very impressed with the way many Nigerian farmers have embraced new technologies, new advancements, and new methods in farming, and with improvement of seeds, given our cultural nature of resistance to change. So if you just oppose that with the fact that our farmers have been quite embracing of this new technology, application of new technology in agriculture, for me, what we have studied so far impresses me. And that underscores the reason why we even started the Food Avail Nigeria, because we have seen that beyond the fact that there could be resistance to change, it is a necessity when you realize that there is something out there that is beneficial not only to farmers but to the people in general and to government specifically, to the extent of ensuring food security. It becomes important that we actually let people know what is going on. I think people resist change because of ignorance and with a lot of preconceived notions, foiled especially by wrong information or fear that is being, sold, I would say, purveyed by persons who do not understand. Because sometimes what you fear What you do not understand, you fear most of the times. So I think that's really the problem.
Now, let's say that you started Food Avail Nigeria because of your love for food productivity, especially in a country that relies on the importation of food, in terms of trying to balance the ecosystem of food supply chain in Nigeria. Now, the acceptability of biotech crop has been a problem for a long time, but luckily we have already gotten some acts of, passed into law supporting the application of biotech, in our agricultural system. Yet we're still having issues with misconceptions this particular technology. Now, you are not a scientist, but again, you have been exposed to the...
I have a background in science.
Oh, right. Because you're a barrister, so that's...
Anybody can become a lawyer, but I have a background in science.
Now, where do we begin from, this advocacy of acceptance?
Let me be honest with you. Our country has seen it for a long time. As far back as 1993, we had a law to establish the Cheddar Institute of Technology, Cheddar Science and Science and Technology Complex. And the biotech lab was envisaged, and it was even embedded in that law, knowing that because and I thank and commend those persons who put that law together, because they had the foresight that the world was going towards the need for, harnessing the benefits of biotechnology. So that's as far back as 1993. Now, the misconceptions are bound to be there when there is no, commensurate, degree of trying to educate the public. Now, the public acceptance of biotechnology in America, in the United States of America, is taken for granted because there has been sufficient, advocacy, and then you had the Food and Drug Agency doing everything it could to also, assure of the safety of such products. In Nigeria, it took a long time. Imagine, between 1993 to 2015, before we had our safety agency, talking about the National Biosafety Management Agency Act being established, being enacted, So that period, that interregnum, created, this gap in knowledge. However, the gap in, knowledge has been bridged so quickly, in my perspective. When we started Food Avail, our intention is actually, we were driven basically by the need for food security. And we've seen over the years how much application of biotechnology to agriculture has actually supported and helped farmers across the world, whether it's in the US or even in places like China, and even in places where it even had serious resistance in Europe. And then we've seen that if we continue to, as a result of either lack of information or unwillingness to embrace change, or being slow in applying biotechnology into agriculture, we may suffer the predicament of countries that are faced with national security issues like food insecurity. We saw it happen in Sri Lanka. There was lack of food, and what happened? There was a sort of social upheaval that led to a change of government. We didn't want that happening. So we wanted to put pressure on the scientists, those who have been saddled with the responsibility of promoting biotechnology in agriculture, to ensure that whatever advancements that have been recorded across the world, in the world of biotechnology across the world in agriculture, should be applied in Nigeria to ensure that there is adequate food security. Our government will not be faced with problems that are unnecessary. You can't imagine that we are still battling with issues of seeds that are poor in nature, that lack quality, whereas with the knowledge of gene editing, you can actually insert a gene of interest in a particular seed to improve it in order to save, in order not only to increase yield, but to save money on an unnecessary time and expenditure in things like pesticides, which actually are harmful to the environment. Of course, there is this balance. There's this balance of, on our part, we are promoting, rapid application of biotechnology to agriculture. Of course, there is the balance in the sense of safety. And then the assurance now comes when you have an independent, agency like the National Biosafety Management Agency that operates with absolute transparency, meaning that any individual can go to the NBMA, that's the Biosafety Management Agency, and ask it for the information on how it got to approve any of these biotechnology products, particularly in terms of improved seeds, and the one that has been embraced seriously by farmers, the BT cowpea, which has not only made farmers to be smiling to the bank in terms of increase of profits, but has also saved them, a lot of money in terms of not unnecessary spraying insecticides, and then also increasing the yields. Better quality in terms of taste and all that. Why should we not embrace that because of fear of the unknown?
No, I had an interview, with the Director General of the National Biotechnology Development Agency, Professor Mustafa, who told me that when we import rice, one we call foreign rice, or individuals could buy cornflakes, from outside Nigeria, or perhaps in our superstores here, that these things are BT products, that they are made of.
Of course, yes.
Now, my mind goes to the fact that, it takes a longer gestation period to conclude that a particular crop can be commercialized, BT commercialized.
Oh yes,
we have those cowpea, now we have, the maize, teller maize, and perhaps soybean or something. But we have a number of staple foods in this country that we are being slow, in my understanding, because of the period that is required for the process to take place. They said 10 years, 15 years, and all of that. But there are countries who have already done well in that, like Brazil, for instance, in rice, for instance. Is it a possibility to get their technology? And then instead of wasting that long period of time to do that.
No, because we have a law. I have my background in law, and because we have a law that recommends specific processes that must be followed to ensure safety, they cannot be compromised. And all of those processes give further assurances to the public that we are dealing with something that is safe. It is very okay.
Can you take the one that has already been processed?
No.
As a transfer of technology.
I agree. That is the position we hold in Food Avail. Nevertheless, we're saying because of environmental factors, considering that certain crops that may have been grown in South America in terms of biotech, that is genetic modified organisms that have been grown in other places, may just for an extra effort, extra mile in ensuring safety, we don't mind. The law must be followed. Nevertheless, don't on a blanket basis say that no, we don't want genetically modified foods in Nigeria. On what basis? It has, for example, for 20 years, we've seen some GM crops that have been grown, consumed over 20 years with all forms of observations, medical observations, analysis, and checking for any form of adverse effect, and you have not recorded, none has been recorded, I would say, by the best of experts across the world. So why generate unnecessary fear? Nevertheless, there shouldn't be this blanket adoption of GM crops that have been grown elsewhere. When our position is that they should be imported, they should be adopted, they should be embraced in Nigeria, However, they must go through that process recommended by the National Biosafety Management Act. There must be a proper risk assessment, if not as it affects human beings, but as it affects the environment and animals. So even if we have a history of these genetically engineered crops being used in places like Brazil successfully without any adverse effect, we want them here in Nigeria as well, but we also want to go to the extra mile. Allow them, according to the law, to pass through the scrutiny of the National Biosafety Management Agency to give further assurances to all of these doubters, because we are on our own. We've already accepted the technology. We've seen the necessity of the application of biotechnology, even in medicine, as it has saved us from the recent ravaging COVID-19. It was very easy for people to accept the vaccine. But why is it difficult to realize that the same biotechnology that has helped us before it became safe modern biotechnology? Because it was the same biotechnology that was used in brewing things like beer and other forms of foods that we've had, whether cheese and all that, in the olden times. Now biotechnology has become more modern and safer, and then it has now become very valuable to us in terms of medicine. But we also need to realize that it has become even safer for the application to agriculture to increase food and to help the environment, because we are being faced with the the danger of climate change that is encroaching upon us, that is threatening us. But if we don't change our approach to agriculture by applying technology, specifically biotechnology, we will be faced with a lot of problems. So yes, there is need, and there is an urgent need to ensure that these crops that have been genetically modified, to ensure that they are safe, to improve quality, to improve the environment, and to also increase the nutrition to human beings, must be quickly applied to Nigeria. However, they must go through the process.
All right, you are watching Agricultural, Biotech and Food Security, and my guest is Barrister Frank Tietie, or Tietie Frank, if you like. He's a barrister, but again, he has a science background as well. That's why he's into food avail via technology. Now, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with Tietie Frank. All right, now, let's come back to the critical issue of convincing Nigerians on the viability of biotechnology, and the issue of dealing with a good number of farmers who are illiterates, for instance. Would they be able to understand the application of biotech? From your experience, I know you have had to do one or two things with farmers. Can they adapt to this?
Of course. You see, I think we are dealing with an era of misinformation, especially in an age of the social media. There is a whole lot of misinformation, I would say, across the world, and particularly in our country, in this age of social media. The notion that it is difficult for farmers to embrace is not correct. Nigerian farmers are willing to embrace any technology and that will improve seeds, or they will improve the process of agriculture in this country. Now, the real problem has to do with those persons who willingly, deliberately, decidedly now go about selling misinformation about the application of biotechnology to agriculture, because it's their stock in trade. Now, the idea of misinformation is that, and especially it becomes dangerous when it is deliberate, is when it's intentional, because of what I call, an oppositional agenda. Because apart from the fact of persons who are stuck in the old ways of doing things, but you see, we have come to see that those with interest, if, for example, this is the usual the thing we have observed, that anytime the application of biotechnology is adopted or genetic modified seeds are adopted or embraced by Nigerian farmers, anywhere it's done, and then it leads to increase of yields and reduction of application of pesticides, you see some person who is worried about the fact that, oh, there must be a problem if this thing grows so well. Because he hasn't sold much of the pesticides as he did before. If this thing could do well without pesticides, then it must have a problem. Why don't you point out the problem? So for us, we call it fallacy of ignorance, because it is false. You are purveying falsehood based on the fact that you don't know. So why don't you just go a step ahead to ask questions? Go to the NBMA, for example. Go to the National Biotechnology Development Agency and ask questions. But they won't ask questions. They will simply stay in their cocoon of of conjectures and say, no, there must be something wrong. No, the world has passed that stage. The Nigerian government established the NBMA, for example, for the purpose of ensuring that the benefits of biotechnology will not only be enhanced, but that there should be adequate application of the processes that ensure its safety to human beings, to the environment, and to animals. Now, that being done, there should be no other problem, because the NBMA, for example, is the final authority when it has to do with issues of biosafety or biosecurity. In that case, the issue of trust is now raised. So long as there is a public trust in the institutions of government that they are able to say this is safe for use, that settles it. So I think what we should be talking about is increasing the trust level of the people. But I can tell you, for farmers in Nigeria, they have serious trust, very convincing trust in GM products, genetically modified seeds in Nigeria, particularly with the BT cowpea.
Okay, now talking about consumption now, the consumers, our target audience at this point in this conversation, with respect to consuming the items, would you subscribe to labeling, BT crops? I mean, if you want to say, look, this is BT crop. If you want to go for it, go for it. Is it possible to do that?
Well, yes, if it is necessary, do it. But let me be honest with you. For a Nigerian consumer who knows that he's been consuming genetically modified food for the past 20 years and he's got no problems, he wouldn't really require that. Let me be honest with you. Like it has been rightly said and referred to, that much of the products we have in our supermarket shelves today, whether the cornflakes or soya bean or milk and all that, that we eat, that we have consumed over the years and that our children have consumed, have all been enhanced, they've all been, produced with genetically modified crops. Particularly, I like one, particularly the canola oil that, people go for because of the quality and all of that. They've consumed them, all of which without any form of adverse effect. If they know that, the consumer wouldn't really mind. But for those persons who, for religious reasons, or for one ideological consideration, or for plain misinformation, have adopted one stance that, we want to stay organic, it is their right. But the truth about it is that they will be missing on the improvements that have been engendered by genetic engineering when they don't consume GM crops. So if they say that they want it labeled, the law makes provision for labeling, and of course, why not? If you go to the supermarket, and that's the good thing about it, is that you see the confidence that many manufacturers now have is that they tell you straight ahead that this particular product has been produced with genetically engineered food and whatever, and then they are selling. So Nigerians really don't mind. But again, I'll keep emphasizing this, there is need, and I'm happy that we have the opportunity to also do that, for Nigerians to know that the application of technology to agriculture can only increase, and it is only for our benefit. And the farmers have realized it. It is not only as a matter of pocket, that is, it's increasing yield for them and they are selling more. No, it is also as a matter of nutrition. That is, the seeds and agricultural products are safer, they are better, they are more nutritious, and then it also reduces the impact of pests on these farm products.
All right, Barrister Tietie Frank, would like to thank you for your time and, of course, sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. But that's one saying that I read on social media of recent, which says that Nigeria is a country where English language is compulsory for every student, while agriculture is selective. People cannot understand that.
Let me be honest with you. In this conversation, I've tried to be as less technical as possible. But in my days, in the secondary school, agricultural science was a compulsory subject. So and then it was a thing of pride that we referred to all of these agricultural products in their botanical name. No, we don't call it rice. We call it Oriza sativa. We don't call it maize. We call it zime. That is even we don't call it normal orange. We have all the botanical name. It was compulsory for us as students. But the good thing about it is this: ignorance is a problem. Many Nigerians at this time are saturated with needless knowledge that is actually
they don't need.
But the problem is, and the good thing I would say is that if there is sufficient education and on the need to tell people that this is useful and it is in your interest. People are interested in what is beneficial to them, not what you want to take from them. When you go that approach, then they will listen. And I think biotechnology is here to stay, and it can only be better for us.
All right, and that's where we say thank you again to Barrister Tietie Frank for being with us on agri, biotech, and the food security. Well, that's a robust contribution to our show by one and only Barrister Tietie, who has a grasp of Nigerians and our mentality in and out of government. For a nation without the birth control measures, we are believing that by the year 2023, we are expected to record 2.41% growth in population. It's estimated that Nigeria may hit a population of about 270 million by the year 2030. How will this population be sure of food security when we get there? Without the inputs of biotechnology in our agricultural system? Well, that would be a big question for another day. For now, thank you for being part of our show. Let's do it again next week. When we return with a fresh edition. I am yours in science, Kyrian Umaya. Bye for now.